order Sir Alex Shelbrooke to move the motion.
Thank you, Ms Vaz, and may I say what pleasure it is to serve under your chairmanship today. And I beg to move that we consider endometriosis education in schools. Ms Vaz, this has been a topic that I have been trying to raise the awareness of now for several years. And I'm actually very proud of the work, not just myself has done, but other colleagues across the House, and not at least, of course, our late great friend Sir David Amos did, in raising the issue of endometriosis, an issue which surprisingly still so many people, men and women, don't know about. And through the work we've done with various debates, especially about endometriosis in the workplace, we really have started to raise the profile, and more people are speaking about it. But it is quite surprising just how few people recognise this disease. And indeed, there was an e-petition that closed in March 2023 entitled "Include PCOS and Endometriosis Education in the National Secondary Curriculum." And that gained only 3,105 votes. And yet, those of us who deal with endometriosis and the people affected by it know that there are thousands, in fact, there are millions of women affected by this disease. So what I seek to do today is to try and address the issue of the awareness of endometriosis by asking my right honourable friend, the Minister, to actually prescribe the teaching of endometriosis in the national curriculum, hopefully for this September. I want to start by, I think, re-highlighting the disease itself and its impact, because I think this is important. I've got a report from a lady called Keisha Meek at the National Endometriosis Sister Support, which was from 2019. I want to highlight some issues from it, because I think she summarises things quite well. Endometriosis comes with many symptoms. These symptoms do not just occur at the time of a woman's period, and the most common symptoms are abdominal cramps, back pain, severe menstrual cramps, abnormal and heavy bleeding, painful bowel movements, pain urinating, painful sex, difficulty becoming pregnant, nausea and sickness. And the impact that this can have on women's lives and on our relationships is enormous. It's described in this document about relationships. Long-term conditions can have significant impacts on relationships between family, friends and partners. This can be due to various different reasons, such as not understanding, lack of information, taboo around the illness, not publicly understood or spoken about. Women who suffer with endometriosis are regularly called liars, told it's just a bad period and called dramatic. It's known in other long-term illnesses that people also struggle to understand this particular illness. And I think just that first paragraph emphasises why I've brought this debate today. It goes on to say, we have found many women with the endometriosis community have lost friends. This is due to them having to cancel plans due to severe pain and bleeding. Sometimes they have been bedbound, even when they have explained to their friends why they can be left out, not invited or treated like liars. It can be a very isolating experience for women or anyone living with a chronic illness. As well as friendships, we have found women have had issues with their families, resulting in family members no longer speaking to them or inviting them to events. Even after trying to educate their families, the taboo around endometriosis makes this difficult, and lack of understanding/knowledge. This is also an issue with other long-term condition communities. We have many women with endometriosis who stay single to protect themselves due to issues in previous relationships. There are women whose partners have left them due to endometriosis. This can be due to sex, the woman's physical health and mental health, infertility, and many other issues that endometriosis can cause. Women have unfortunately been victims of domestic abuse, their partner's excuse being endometriosis or raped them due to saying they can't have sex due to the pain. And then there are the issues in work. Many women work with endometriosis. However, this can be a struggle, and there is a lack of understanding for endometriosis sufferers, and this is not well known. They are also not protected under the Disability Act, and colleagues, the Honourable Lady for Hull West, and Hazel. And I recently had a meeting with some campaigners with the Disability Minister, and we are trying to move that forward in a separate piece of work. So there's a wide-ranging set of departments who are needed to address this. But it does result in women having to take a long time off work. In most cases, women find themselves on sickness plans which they're unable to adhere to. This results in termination of employment. A lot of women find themselves moving around employment positions trying to survive and pay bills. Due to sickness, many women have felt discriminated against. Now, this, I think, speaks to the heart of why I want this to become a curriculum part of the agenda, because this debate is not just about women who can suffer from endometriosis. It's about society as a whole understanding this disease. And I just want to pay credit to Essex Police, who, after I did the debate on endometriosis in the workplace, contacted me shortly afterwards to understand if there was more they could be doing. So there are employers out there who are proactively moving ahead. But one of the points that I want to curricularize this is because I think it's important that everybody is taught about this disease. I give way to the Honourable Lady.
Pay tribute to the work that he's been doing on this issue as well. So I wonder if he agrees with me that I'm slightly concerned about the latest sex and relationship guidance that the government have published, because it actually removes a previous reference to cover menstruation on the curriculum in primary schools with this not before year 4. Now, obviously, the average age for girls to start their periods is 12. However, as you can see, looking at the data, some girls start age 8 and younger. So removing that reference means that some girls could be starting their periods before actually receiving any education on what periods are. And the same guidance also removes the reference to males having the education at primary school. Now, surely the government think that it's important for girls and boys to understand all about periods. So as again, pay tribute for his work in securing this debate.
Sir Alex Shelbrooke.
I am most grateful to the Honourable Lady, my Honourable friend, who we've done a great amount of work on this together. And as I say, this is truly a cross-party effort. The Honourable Member from the DUP and I know the Honourable Lady for Livingston would want to mention today as well for and the work she's done. So it's truly cross-party. And the Honourable Lady's right, and I'm going to touch on some of that stuff later on, and I've had some representations from people to touch on that. But actually what the Honourable Lady has mentioned there is why I'm glad we're bringing this debate today, because it's highly relevant at this moment in time based on the statement that was made last Thursday. And I'm glad that the Minister's been able to find time to respond to this debate today, because I think it's absolutely right that we try and use this particular moment to really highlight this. I just want to close off on this first bit saying that there's also more risk for person with endometriosis to have the following diseases, and I think this is important because we educate about these diseases, but we're not educating about this particular disease. So ovarian cancer, there's a 37% higher chance than the general public. Endocrine tumours, 38% higher chance than the general public. Kidney cancer, 26% higher. Thyroid cancer, 33% higher. Brain tumours, 27% higher. Malignant melanoma, 23% higher. Heart attacks, 62% more likely. And that is a direct result of blood loss and anemia. Another account I've got is from a lady who contacted me after I went to the premiere of Below the Belt in 2022, and I recommend anybody who has an interest in this subject to view that film. And she got in contact with me, and again, I'm going to give you this description because it paints the picture of why this is so important. I am a stage 4 endometriosis sufferer, in which it took over 15 years to be diagnosed, in which time my story in brief was. Every month since I started my period, I would spend the first day sat on the toilet holding my bin so that I could be sick and completely empty my bowels. I would then 9 times out of 10 pass out in the bathroom or on the hall trying to get to my bedroom. If I wasn't lucky enough to be out cold, I would have to take enough painkillers to knock me out. I would then spend 2 days in bed having hot sweats and a cycle of being in pain, throwing up and sleeping. When I hit 30, I started to have mid-cycle pains and neurological symptoms and extreme fatigue, in which I struggled to stay awake, and I would have to take daily naps. I started to have blood in my poo and bloated stomach. I was having upper quadrant pain and getting these weird red dots on my skin, suffering with night sweats and random fast heart palpitations. I thought I was going to die. From the age of 13, being called a liar, being shoved painkillers and antidepressants, being told that it's just a period and to get over it by GPs. Several referrals to gynecology from the age of 17, being told that I have a low pain intolerance and to just have a baby as that will sort everything out. Also reassuring me that nothing's wrong at all with my fertility, how wrong they were. Being misdiagnosed with anxiety, depression, IBS, piles, queering bowel cancer and Crohn's. Being told I had a tiny cyst on my ovary that meant nothing, and I have dramatised and medicalised the situation as I know it is. Suffering early stages miscarriages, chemical pregnancies. Handing my notice into a job I loved due to the lack of support and work-based banter over me being sensitive. Passing out at work, being called lazy at work for having to sit down, getting into trouble for spending too long in the toilets, disappearing. Wake up in the uni toilets 5 hours later by myself after passing out in pain, in which I had to pay over £100 to get a cab back from Eastbourne to London, in which a cab driver then had to deal with my endometriosis flare-up on a motorway until I passed out in pain. When he got me home, I woke up to random people around me as he started to bang on all the doors to get help to find somebody that I knew. I've lost friends due to letting them down, being sick for no reason at all. Once I prayed privately over £5,000 to find out what was wrong with me and get help, in which I was told I could lose my bowel, my womb and bowel are twisted, my organs have been shoved to the left-hand side of my body. I then had a fight with my GP to get access to the help I needed, in which I was sent as a routine patient to a general gynaecologist who told me to have a baby and go on the pill. It then took me weeks to be asked to be sent to Guy's endometriosis clinic, in which I was given an urgent appointment after I sent them through my scans. They then gave me an urgent MRI and told me that they believe it is worse than expected and I would lose my tubes and ovary and require a stoma, although I would have to wait over 2 years for surgery to go on to pain management and to medicate the pain, 9 to 12 months wait list. I've paid over £15,000 for private robotic surgery to completely remove all my endo. The best choice of my life. I have my life back. I now have mild pain during my periods, which I can manage with exercise or occasional paracetamol. My periods do not mar my life. I have my life back. The reason I wanted to give those examples is because I think it describes the real trauma of this disease. 10% of women in this country have this disease. And yet, I've had a report from Hey Endo, a lady called Nell, who I'm grateful is I think the Honourable Lady for Hull, Western Hessel knows quite well. And I'm exceptionally grateful for the information she sent through to me from what they're doing in schools. And I think these statistics are quite shocking. Have you heard of endometriosis? 54% said no. Have you heard of endometriosis? 98% said no. Have you heard of PCOS? 57% said no. Do you talk to your family about period health? 52% said no. Do you talk to your friends about period health? 60% said yes, 38% said no. Do you feel like you can approach your education setting about period health? 54% said no. Did you learn about periods in school? 16% said no, 82% said yes. And I think that's important because we are educating about periods, but we're not educating about the diseases. Did you learn about endometriosis in school? 88% said no. And before the presentation, only 30 students could state a fact they knew about endometriosis. I will give vote to the Honourable Lady.
Absolutely right. And as he's pointed out, 10%, so that means in every classroom you're talking 3 or 4 girls in, or pupils are potentially having endometriosis, and it's still not covered. So I strongly suggest that we look at covering it specifically, as has been mentioned, but as early as possible, because this is having an impact on girls taking their exams. It's exam season right now. They're in the middle of their GCSEs. Some girls will be sitting their GCSEs now, suffering from endometriosis. So I think it should stop being such a taboo subject. It happens to a lot of us. Let's make it more publicly known.
Alex Shelbrooke.
I'm most grateful to the Honourable Lady. And actually, just drawing on the Honourable Lady's point, I'm rather concerned about reports that have been in the press about schools not allowing girls to use the toilet, saying that they've got period passes, that they should plan around it. All these policies are set up around normal periods. Yeah. And that goes to show that there is a distinct lack of understanding throughout, not just in the curriculum, but throughout the school policies as well. And that's why I think it's so vital that we move this issue forward so quickly. So, I did some research, which I'm sure the Minister is well aware of, about what happens at each key stage and how it's taught in physical health part. But key stage 4 to 5, about fertility and pregnancy choices, includes how an individual's fertility changes over lifetime and where to seek medical help and emotional support. Key stage 3 to 5, truth undressed, lessons in collaboration with Caniston, set of 4 lessons promoting understanding of vulva and vaginal health. Key stage 3 to 4, breast cancer, in collaboration with breast cancer charity Copperfield, to encourage young people to get to know their bodies, adopt healthy behaviours from a young age. This lesson includes essential knowledge about breast cancer, information on healthy lifestyle choices that may reduce a person's risk of getting cancer, guidance to help them to get to know their bodies, guidance on what to do if they find something that's not normal for them. Key stage 3 and key stage 4 to 5, testicular health, includes information on testicular torsion, orchidectomy, testicular cancer. Now, I'm sure every single person in here agrees that that is highly important education, and cancer is a terrible disease. But there is the word, it is a disease. Endometriosis is a disease, and I feel that it should be getting exactly the same treatment in the curriculum as other diseases who have been noted. And I noted the Secretary of State's comments about a range of disease and areas that are being looked at to bring into the curriculum, but I'm specifically talking about endometriosis today to push it forward. And as I was pointed out before, I think it's absolutely vital that we teach this to boys and girls, because when you get into adult life and you're running a company or you're running a business, the bosses, I genuinely don't believe that people are of bad mind. I really don't believe that people want to be evil to people. I really don't believe that people want to bully people. I think it always comes down to a lack of education and knowledge and not understanding situations. And maybe I'm a naive politician, but I do believe in the good in people, and I don't believe that people want to treat people badly, but they just don't know anything about this. And that comes down to education, that comes down to the curriculum. I've had a note, and draws on the Honourable Lady for Whole Western Hessel, from Endometriosis UK, and they've asked me whether I could raise these points in this debate directly to the Minister. The proposal is the removal of a previous reference to covering menstruation on the curriculum in primary schools before the onset of puberty, the introduction of not before year 4 age limit on when pupils learn about menstruation. Endometriosis UK are concerned the proposed new age restrictions may prevent some children learning about periods before they start and seek further consideration on this. There's a proposal, the introduction of a specific reference to children being taught the more appropriate language of periods and menstrual products rather than sanitary items or hygiene product. Endometriosis UK fully support. Outdated language focus on hygiene and sanitary product feeds a myth that menstruation is dirty and unhygienic rather than a natural and normal process. The proposal of the removal of previous reference to male pupils when learning about menstruation in primary schools. Endometriosis UK would like to see all pupils, including male pupils, learn about menstruation in primary school. The proposal, the introduction of a new requirement to cover gynecological health, including what is an average period problems such as premenstrual syndrome, heavy menstrual bleeding, endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and when to seek help from healthcare professionals to pupils in secondary schools. Endometriosis UK are extremely supportive. Endometriosis being on the curriculum for all pupils in secondary would be a major step forward. We're delighted to also see plans for specific content focusing on when to seek help from healthcare professionals, which will help drive down diagnosis times for endometriosis. Finally, the introduction of a new requirement to cover productive health, fertility and menopause to pupils in secondary schools. Endometriosis UK support this. So, as I draw to conclude, I think I have some points to ask the Minister. As I say, this disease affects 10% women, and that is millions of women, and it can be from mild symptoms to horrific symptoms. And tragically, Minister, I have to tell you that dozens of women every year take their life over this disease because they cannot cope any longer with the pain. It's a very difficult disease to solve, but knowledge of what that disease is at a start may give a head start towards the 8 to 10 years waiting time to get a diagnosis. Again, I believe that this is something because people just don't know enough about it. And the example I gave from that poor woman who, from the start of her periods, which medical science these days, and the Honourable Lady for Hull, West and Hessel said about menstruation starting in 9-year-olds now. So one of the questions I have to my right honourable friend is what work they will be doing with health professionals as to consider when we should be putting endometriosis education into the curriculum. Because I personally believe it is important that girls, and maybe boys can be taught later, but certainly girls need to know about the potential problems that could affect them before they start their menstruation. And I really look for the Minister's guidance, maybe he needs to take it away, on what work he will be doing to find out really when we can put that in, because obviously there's a lot of science basically about what average ages are to start. But I do think it's important, when you heard that example of the woman who from the moment her period started were in pain, I think you do need to understand what it is. And what I really want to push for, Minister, is that endometriosis is in the curriculum for sex education in the way it is. You have breast cancer in there, in personal health education, that breast cancer is in there. This is another terrible disease, and it does result in death. It does result in death, and there's no getting around that. So I think everybody needs to understand this disease. I think that's where education becomes the place, the responsibility of the government to do it. And I'll just finish on this. If you don't know a disease exists, how do you know you've got a disease?
The question is that this House has considered endometriosis education in schools. Jim Shannon.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. And can I first of all thank the honourable gentleman for Elmet and Rothwell for highlighting this debate. He's done that in Westminster Hall numerous times. He's done it more times in the Chamber, and I've heard him on many occasions, and I admire his determination to have this subject matter discussed and made aware. So the debate today has been one where the honourable gentleman rightly has tried to raise awareness, and I congratulate him and wish him well in that. And the honourable lady who has just left, unfortunately, made two very significant interventions. I suspect that the honourable lady didn't say so, but I suspect that that's from a personal knowledge of the honourable lady's circumstances as well. As members may be aware, whilst I'm a father to 3 sons only, my wife always wanted a wee girl, but it just wasn't going to happen. I work in an office with 6 female staff and 1 male staff, and I certainly am a lot more educated than I had been, and let's be honest, this understanding should not take that long. Gone should be the days of boys and girls being separated out to discuss these issues. The honourable gentleman referred to that really important issue in his introductory comments, but in his summing up comments as well. These issues affect entire households, and there should be a very frank, honest and non-shameful understanding, and this frankly doesn't take place at this time. Whenever I married my wife at 37 years ago on the 6th of June, the doctor, it's funny the honourable gentleman referred to this story, and he referred to one of his constituents, and the doctor told him, told Sandra, if you have a wee boy, or if you have a child, we had a wee boy, if you have a child, this will all go away. Well, no, it didn't. Indeed, 3 boys later, it still hadn't gone away. And my wife suffered with this over all those years, and only the last 3 or 4 years, because of things, life-changing things, it has been slightly different. But I want to refer to, if I can, one of my staff members. She suffers from endometriosis. And I was saying to the honourable gentleman beforehand, I'm going to tell her story. I'm not going to mention her name, but that would be the wrong thing to do. But I want to mention her story because it's a terrible story that she's had to go through. She was diagnosed in 2019 at the age of 24 after having been referred to gynae in 2012. That was 7 years earlier. It took 7 years to get the diagnosis. She has yet to be able to see an endometriosis consultant, and she is now 29 years of age. So that is 12 years, and she is still on the waiting list. She's been red flagged on 3 separate occasions, and her own GP, I have to say a very good GP, I'm not saying all GPs aren't good, by the way, just make that very clear right now, one of the very few to hold a gynae clinic at GP level, who has instigated medical menopause and given oestrogen and implanted a coil, all on the basis of her ultrasound. So her GP, her doctor, has been incredibly helpful to her. But she's been through all sorts of problems, and she's worked with me for a great few years now, and I'm well aware of some of the problems that she has, not from a personal point of view, but just watching her and seeing how she affects the day as she moves forward and tries to do her work. Now, most GPs don't offer the facility that her GP does. There are 2 specialists in Northern Ireland, and we are left with women who are in pain and afraid of their fertility potential, and partners who don't know how best to support and help what they cannot see and perhaps cannot understand. And I think that's part of it as well. I think it's good that you can offer sympathy, you can offer comfort, you can talk to your partner or to your wife and maybe your friend in these matters. But sometimes you don't really understand it because you really can't feel it, what they're going through. So I believe that Donald Gentleman is right. We need an absolute shift in narrative to away from closed doors, I should say, and to understanding. We need to stop the classification of it. My mother probably suffered from something similar now. She's 92 until I'm 93. But I remember when she was younger, and she had a number of miscarriages and other things that happened. But they always referred to, and my mother always said, they always referred to it as women's problems. Well, you know, that covers a very generic subject matter, but it doesn't really illustrate the issue. Absolutely, yeah.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. Can I apologise to the chair for my lateness arriving? Can I just say to him, does he agree with me that that's one of the fundamental problems, that when we describe things as women's problems, we're actually shying away from giving conditions and diseases the proper names that they have, and in so doing are effectively avoiding an informed, intelligent discussion? Shannon.
I thank the honourable lady for that, and yes, I absolutely do agree with that. Because after that, I just said, when you refer to women, you don't bring into the open the painful issue. You almost push it aside, and the honourable lady is absolutely right. Honourable lady is absolutely right to bring this forward. It's an issue that deserves medical attention and significant attention of some kind. We need to encourage medical students to take up the speciality by providing help with tuition, as they have done for colleagues, constituencies in Wales. I understand that Wales have done some of these things. There's been a shortage of physiotherapists and other things. So the question I asked the Minister, ever mindful the Minister is always responsive in the questions that we answer, and we appreciate that there, because it makes the job of our questions to him that wee bit easier when we know we're going to get a decent answer. But how do we encourage medical students to take this speciality? By normalising the conversation around reproductive health, and by removing boundaries to conversations. And this must start in education at the very beginning, at school level, secondary school level, college level, in education, and the conversation should then continue right through life. That's what the honourable gentleman is asking for. That's what I support him. I finish with this comment, Madam Chair. The NHS is failing young women, but more than this, it's also failing families. We do it disservice by taking a silent stance, and it's right today that we bring endometriosis out of the silence and into the conversation, but only if action follows. Thank you so much.
Opposition spokesperson Catherine McKinnell.
Thank you, and it is a pleasure to serve under you as chair today, Ms Vaz. And I really want to congratulate the Right Honourable Member for Elmet and Rothwell on securing this incredibly important debate on this incredibly important topic. And I know he has campaigned tirelessly over many years on this subject, and he's spoken incredibly passionately today, sharing very painful testimonies, but really shining a spotlight on endometriosis, and in particular highlighting how workplaces, governments and schools can all provide better support to those experiencing this condition. Because, as he rightly set out, endometriosis can be an incredibly challenging condition to live with and can impact every aspect of a person's life. There's no way of preventing it, and its cause is not yet understood. Yet it does affect around 1 in 10 women in the UK, and as he rightly pointed out, that means on average at least 1 girl in every classroom will go on to experience it. And indeed, the symptoms can start very early on in adolescence.
Thinking of this disease primarily as a barrier to pregnancy or simply making a girl or a woman's periods more painful is a gross oversimplification and in many cases incredibly inaccurate, which is why this important debate today is so crucial. The disease can vary widely in severity in the way it manifests. For example, 12% of endometriosis cases target women's lungs and can cause symptoms above chronic pain, symptoms that can shatter a woman's confidence and have a debilitating effect on her mental health. Endometriosis, oh yes, of course, can also cause chronic bowel and bladder-related symptoms, which can lead indeed to depression, which I know the Honourable Gentleman has highlighted also.
I feel that we miss me in this debate to just mention the fact that endometriosis continues in many people after the menopause. This is not something that is just for women who menstruate, it's also after the menopause, it can start before. And as the Honourable Lady is pointing out, this disease is not just restricted to gynaecology.
The Honourable Gentleman once again demonstrates how incredibly knowledgeable he is about this issue and how much that knowledge is lacking in the wider public and indeed in this place. And we're very grateful to him for that. And it is why it is so essential that young people are taught about their bodies in school, learning not just about relationships and sex, but also health and well-being. And it must include what is and isn't normal throughout puberty, the menstrual cycle, and hormones, and to set young girls and young people up to live healthy lives, both mentally and physically. I will.
It's a really important point about what is and what is not normal. When the Women and Equality Select Committee did some work around women's reproductive health, one of the messages that we got from various of the witnesses who came in front of us was that they simply had no comprehension that their periods were not normal, because the message that they got from medics the whole time was, well, you just have to get on with it.
Catherine McKinnell. She makes an important point, and her committee has done so much important work to highlight this area. And that does really point to the importance of our education system and combating some of the misunderstandings and also aiding that knowledge and understanding that people need to be armed with through life for either themselves and what they'll experience or what those around them may experience also. So sex education has been compulsory in English schools since 2017 and initially covered broad elements of sexual and reproductive health. And after many years of campaigning, it was revised in 2020. And since then, both boys and girls in state schools have been taught about periods and menstrual well-being. And of course, along with the rest of RSHE, the resources used do need to be tailored to the relevant age group. They need to be sensitive to a young person's maturity and their needs. And as the government's website says, educating all pupils and students about periods is crucial to tackling the stigma which surrounds it. Labour very much agrees with this, and the next Labour government will ensure that the curriculum taught in all state-funded schools will reflect the issues and diversities of our society and ensure all young people leave school ready for life. We've already pledged to deliver an expert-led curriculum and assessment review in government, which will learn from international best practice and research across all areas, from history to health, to make sure our curriculum is as strong and as relevant as it can be. And I look forward to hearing more from members in this place and from stakeholders when the review gets started to ensure that we are picking up on those issues which have been identified in this debate today and ensuring they are covered. Part of this will also require having enough teachers in the classroom to improve children's outcomes and ensure that that curriculum can be delivered to every child as intended. And we've seen over the past few years dire statistics on teacher recruitment, especially in secondary schools, which is why we've made tackling the recruitment and retention crisis a real focus and have announced our fully funded plans to deliver 6,500 more teachers to fill those gaps across the profession. But I recognise that education will only go so far. This is very much a health issue also, and one on which far too many women are being failed. Nearly as many women in the UK have endometriosis as have diabetes. Yet it is unseen in everyday life, and waiting lists mean that women are waiting far too long for treatment. Gynecology waiting lists have had the biggest increase of all specialisms in the NHS since the pandemic, and it leaves those experiencing endometriosis, as the Honourable Gentleman very painfully set out in his speech, with years of unrelieved pain in the bowels or bladder, poor mental health, fertility problems, the list goes on. And I was really glad to see the Women's Health Strategy published in 2022, but it must go further. We must address these NHS backlogs. We must bring these waiting lists down. We must set out a plan to properly address the workplace challenges in the NHS. And for those living with this condition who are impacted by poor mental health as a result, Labour have committed to establishing a mental health hub in every community. So we would deliver on that mental health support in every secondary school and ensure that young people who are experiencing symptoms that are related to these conditions, as well as all young people who are really struggling with their mental health at the moment, can access that support. So to conclude, Ms Vaz, for too long, women's health has been an afterthought. And I'm glad that debates like this are held so that there is an opportunity to discuss these issues in Parliament. And I reiterate my gratitude to the Right Honourable Member for Elmet and Rothmel for bringing this forward today, and for all the contributions he has made on this subject, and for all the contributions of honourable members as well who have attended this debate today. We have to get the education right. We have to ensure young people have the information they need to live a healthy life. And I look forward to hearing from the Minister on what steps the government will take to improve our education in this very important area.
Minister Damien Hines.
Thank you very much, Ms Vaz, and can I say what a pleasure it is to see you in the chair. I think for the first time that I have spoken under your chairship. And I want to join others in congratulating my right honourable friend, the member for Elmet and Rothwell, on securing this important debate today. I also want to thank everybody who's taken part, the Honourable Lady from Kingston upon Hull West and Settle, the Honourable Gentleman from Strangford, my right honourable friend from Romsey and Southampton North, and of course the lady who speaks for the opposition, the honourable member for Newcastle North. There is clearly strong cross-party support and drive to help improve the understanding of women's health issues and ensure that young people are able to both navigate the issues they might face and also, crucially, to understand and support others. This today has been an important follow-up to my right honourable friend's previous Westminster Hall debate in 2022 on the importance of raising awareness of endometriosis and the support needed in the workplace, including tackling the many challenges this can mean for employers and staff on an everyday basis, as he outlined so powerfully in his words. I've also seen firsthand the excellent work my right honourable friend has been doing to improve information and education on endometriosis more generally, and I do applaud his dedication to keep this issue in the spotlight. His prominent quotation at the time of that debate was that it would take 20 days at 24 hours a day to name every woman in this country who suffers from endometriosis. And I think that really brings home the scale of what we are talking about, as he said again. Of course, colleagues in the Department of Health and Social Care are particularly engaged in these issues, and the government has made women's health a top priority in driving forward a women's health strategy that's delivering a better standard of care for women and girls. Care for menstrual problems, including endometriosis, is one of the government's top delivery priorities for this year. We're investing £25 million to establish women's health hubs, which will improve access to services for menstrual problems, including endometriosis, contraception, menopause, and more. Women's health hubs will also take pressure off secondary care waiting lists. Ensuring girls and women have access to high-quality, trusted information is a top priority too. We've created a women's health area on the NHS website, which brings together over 100 pages, including periods and endometriosis, and we've launched a video series on endometriosis on the NHS YouTube channel. In April, we ran a campaign in national media titles supported by the Women's Health Ambassador for England, encouraging women not to suffer in silence if their periods or menopause symptoms affect their daily lives. That included a specific focus on endometriosis symptoms, and we're planning further campaigns across the year. Sadly, we are all aware of the taboos and stigma that surround many areas of women's health, with girls and women not feeling able to talk about issues such as periods. Too many girls and women are made to feel that very painful or heavy periods are normal and something they just have to get used to, rather than how they can seek help for those symptoms and understand what's happening to their bodies. So education does play an important role to complement the women's health strategy, and that includes, of course, education in schools. Ensuring there is an early understanding of women's health issues, including endometriosis, amongst boys as well as girls, and I'll come back to that, can help in removing these remaining stigmas and taboos. My right honourable friend will be aware that last week we published for consultation updated draft statutory guidance for relationship, sex and health education. It's part of the government's plan to deliver a brighter future for Britain, one where our young people are supported and given the right education at the right time so they're safe and happy and healthy and equipped with the information they need to succeed. The revised RSHE curriculum includes strong health education which focuses on the core knowledge that children and young people need to be able to thrive as they progress into the wider world. To get the RSHE guidance right, we have worked with stakeholders in the sector, with faith groups, with teachers, with academics and with young people themselves. We've also worked with colleagues across government to ensure the content is accurate and up to date, that the content of lessons is factual and appropriate, and that children have the capacity to fully understand everything they're being taught, including learning about puberty and menstrual and gynecological health. I'm pleased to be able to say that this has led us to make significant additions to teaching in this area, including improvements to teaching about health and including menstrual health. This is in addition to what's already in the national curriculum, where the menstrual cycle is taught to pupils between 11 and 14 years of age as part of the Key Stage 3 science curriculum. Ms. Vaz, the updated draft RSHE guidance states that primary school pupils should be taught the key facts about the menstrual cycle, including physical and emotional changes from year 4. The secondary curriculum includes more on menstrual and gynecological health, now specifically including endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and heavy menstrual bleeding. These areas are now specifically set out in the developing bodies topic of the guidance. I will.
To the response my right honourable friend's giving, and he's outlining a very clear path as we try and improve this subject. In terms of the education around endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, etc., in Key Stage 3, is that at the very start of Year 7? Because I do have a concern that by taking out of Key Stage 2 for girls who would have started their menstrual cycle, the example I gave, that the lady said from her very first period she was in pain. So if I can just push my right honourable friend on when the department, and he may have to go away and may not be able to respond right now and accept that, but if I can push my right honourable friend on when the department thinks it's going to be appropriate, is it for getting ready for girls to start their periods, or is it once they've started their periods?
Mr. Damien Hines.
Can I say a couple of things in response to that, Ms. Rasmussen? It's a very important and clear question from my right honourable friend. It's important to note a couple of things. The first is that the guidance is a framework. It's not a week by week series of lessons. Now, he read out earlier some examples of something closer to sort of lesson plans and a sequenced curriculum, and that's at a sort of a further level of detail. So the guidance sets out a framework, and then actual teaching materials are developed, including by, and he mentioned a couple of the third parties who are involved in that. We don't specify to schools which third parties or others, or indeed created materials they should use, and we don't get into the level of detail of saying from the first half term in year 7 this is what should happen. That's the first thing, but we also don't stop it happening. That's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is that threaded throughout the RSHE guidance, and indeed more broadly, there is flexibility for schools to respond to their own circumstances, their children, who they know better than anybody sitting in Whitehall ever could. And I'll come on in a moment to saying that we talk about not... the general point is learning about menstruation from year 4, but that doesn't mean that if you have... that you're unable to talk about menstruation before year 4, if that is the appropriate thing to do, because there are girls in the class who are already at that stage. So I hope that helps to give a little more clarity, but I'll be, of course, happy as ever to follow up with him separately as well if he would like. Ms. Vaz, the revised draft guidance sets out the curriculum content related to puberty and menstruation should also be complemented by sensitive arrangements to help girls prepare for and manage menstruation, including with requests for period products, and to his point earlier, that schools should use appropriate language such as period pads and menstrual products. The guidance also sets out how and when to seek support, including which adults they can speak to in school if they're worried about their health. Rightly, the revised guidance supports young people to understand their changing bodies and their feelings, how to protect their own health and well-being, and when a physical or mental health issue requires attention. We have introduced age limits, minimum ages in certain areas to ensure children aren't being taught sensitive or complex subjects before they're fully ready to understand them. But as I was saying, and it comes also to the point that the Honourable Lady from Kingston upon Hull and Hessel made, where girls start menstruating earlier than year 4, schools do have the flexibility to cover that. And the relationships, sex and health education guidance is statutory and part of the basic school curriculum. So schools must have regard to the guidance and can only deviate from it with good reason. And I just want to take this moment to be totally clear. We do not mean these subjects should only be taught to girls or should not be taught to boys. It is true that in the previous edition of the guidance that was there in the rubric, it not being in that sense does not mean that's no longer the case. It is taken as read that this is for all pupils. And it is true, and the honourable gentleman from Strangford and others talked about, the tendency sometimes in generations past, perhaps sometimes in generations present, to use phrases like, women's problems and generalise things into something that, I don't know, somehow it's not important for everybody to understand or differentiate within, and that is what we need to move beyond. As I said earlier, relationship, sex and health education is not only about understanding what's happening to your body, it is also about understanding the people around you and what may happen in future that you will come into contact with. In an analogous sense, I was pleased that in the 2019 edition of this guidance we included the menopause for the first time, something that generations of boys in particular, but actually at that age boys and girls didn't know about. It wasn't to say that was about to happen to them, but of course in our wider lives, remember it's relationships and sex and health education, in our wider relationships, these things are all important for us to be educated on. Please.
And as I say, I'm very grateful for the response he's giving, but this was a but. Actually specifying that endometriosis will be taught in schools. I can't dig out whether he's actually saying it will definitely be taught. So I just wanted clarification on that from my right honourable friend.
Minister Damien Hines.
I did. So specifically in Key Stage 3, so in lower secondary school, yes, should be part of the curriculum at that time. I will.
apologies for not having dug around in any great detail in the very recently released guidance. And I absolutely appreciate this is a debate about endometriosis. But let's just call them problem periods, can be a whole range of conditions. Yes. And we had evidence on my committee from Vicky Patterson, who was talking about the very severe premenstrual stress she had. I can't remember what the precise acronym for that was. But also Nagaman Chetty spoke of adenomyosis, which I finally learnt how to pronounce. And I just wondered whether they were both conditions that were also included, because actually teaching young girls to have the language around what is normal and what is not normal and giving them the confidence to speak about it is more than just saying, and you might get endometriosis. There's a whole range of conditions out there.
Minister Hines.
Yeah, so to come back to my earlier point, what I was saying was that the secondary curriculum includes more on menstrual and gynecological health, now specifically including endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and heavy menstrual bleeding. Beyond that, I'm going to have to ask her forgiveness and ask that I may write to her, or we may follow up separately to this debate today. Ms Vaz, Ofsted will inspect schools on their delivery of the RSHE curriculum. As part of their personal development judgment, inspectors will discuss with schools whether they teach RSHE in line with the RSHE statutory guidance. The guidance is now out for consultation for 8 weeks. I have a feeling that colleagues here today may themselves take part in that consultation, or some of the outside bodies that they are in close touch with will take part in it. And we will take all responses to the consultation, of course, into account in the final version of the guidance. We are expecting a huge amount of interest in the updated draft guidance, and I can confirm from the last time that we had a consultation on draft RSHE guidance. There is indeed, quite understandably and rightly, a lot of public interest. We hope to analyse that over the summer and publish a final version soon after. Of course, then schools will require time to implement any changes to the curriculum and to consult parents over those changes. It wouldn't be fair to expect them to deliver new content without some time to prepare for it. But where they're ready to deliver new content, they can do so immediately. And indeed, I'm sure many schools will already be covering endometriosis when discussing healthy periods. And we have encouraged this. Ms Vaz, further, following a meeting with the chairs of the APPG on endometriosis at the time, it was the Honourable Lady from Kingston upon Hull West and Hessel, and our much loved, much missed late colleague Sir David Amos. In 2021, the then Schools Minister agreed to update the department's teacher training module, on the changing adolescent body, so that it too include a direct reference to endometriosis. And once we've finalised the RSHE statutory guidance later this year, we will update the teacher training modules and consider whether any further support is required. To date, we've invested over £3 million in a central support package to increase schools' confidence to teach these subjects, including teacher training modules, non-statutory guidance, a Train the Trainer programme, and teacher webinars on domestic violence, pornography and sexual exploitation. These are all available on a one-stop page for teachers on gov.uk. Of course, there is always more to do to help schools, and we will look at this after the publication of the guidance and when we've listened to school leaders, stakeholders and others. And the Honourable Lady who speaks for the opposition moved into some parallel and important areas around mental health, and her party's concentration on mental health support in secondary school. Look, I would remind her that we are in the process of already rolling out mental health support teams across the country, and we think that is important for primary schools as well as secondary schools. It has to be done at a pace where you can recruit the people required for those teams. And we've also, as she will know, offered a training grant to all schools, primary as well as secondary, for training for a mental health lead within the existing school staff, with a high level of take-up already. Ms Vaz, I am enormously grateful to my right honourable friend for the support that he has given in bringing this debate today. He has raised some very important concerns, as have others. And I hope he is happy to see, pleased to see the continued work that the government is doing to improve menstrual and gynecological health in schools today and for future generations of women. The steps we've taken so far to improve health education are extremely important and ones we really want to get right. This government will continue to make a commitment to support this policy area because it's the right thing to do. And I want to thank my right honourable friend once more for his continued drive on this important subject and for bringing this crucial debate to the floor of Westminster Hall today.
Thank you, Minister. Sir Alex Shelbrooke, to wind up.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. And clearly, I think today's debate's shown that this is indeed cross-party. There's no politics in this. This is highly important for young people's health and the consequences that will have going through lifetime. I'm grateful for the Minister's response. I'm glad to see the curriculum is moving forward, but rest assured, Minister, I will still be nagging at your door to make sure we get exactly what we need to give people, young people and people throughout their lives the support and education that they need.
The question is that this House has considered endometriosis education in schools. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.
The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended.